Today, I am going to present to you a little bit about gaming as seen through the lens of Jane McGonigal's SuperBetter. So Jane created this game, SuperBetter, when she got a concussion several years back and found herself frustrated that she couldn't recover from the concussion fast enough. And so she created this game to originally help people get better from concussions, but then it now can help people get better from a number of different things. And so I want to look at today, how does her game facilitate learning, and and where does it fall short, and look at it in the context of research that's been done on gaming in general. So these are the resources that I used outside of just using her game website. I read these 3 articles in addition to a few other things I read about gaming. You can find these articles on my website as well. So just a little bit of a recent history of gaming. Video game producers and other experts have spent years trying to be taken seriously, and just recently people are starting to take them seriously and recognize that games are more than just a fun waste of time. And some people are still skeptical, but some people are really starting to listen. And so now that the gamers have the attention of the broader world, their job is to show us how and why games can increase learning. And that's a little bit of what I'm going to look at today. And I thought something that I read in one of the articles that I thought was really helpful is to remember that although the current generation of students or children do play a lot of video games, we can't lump them all into one category. There's a big difference in terms of genders, how much people play, and there are just a number of kids who don't play many games, and those that do love games play a variety of games. And so we have to be careful not to lump them all into one category or try to use just one type of game to teach our students. So, what is SuperBetter trying to teach? Well, they're in the business of teaching resilience. And so, according to Jane, this is a skill that's important in all areas of life. And the hope is that it can be learned through this game and then transferred to real life. And that will make players better off in the long run. And so this was towards the beginning of the game, just a screenshot of what it looks like. And at every screen, there was a video of Jane, who is the coach of this game. And so she encourages you and gives you information and helps you out if you're not sure where to go next. And so, as you can see, you have a choice between just choosing a power pack, which is a game that's already been created, or you can design your own adventure. And so thought this was interesting. According to a lot of the research I did, a reason that games are really successful is when players can actually produce and not just consume, and really be builders of the curriculum that they're learning. Curriculum in a loose sense of the word, but that they can, so the fact that this game allows you to design your own adventure is actually pretty cool. So as I was beginning this game, I chose a power pack, though, just to see what kind of game she already had created. And so from there, basically you have a list of quests. And so my first quest, you can see, so I said that I was just playing this game just in a general sense to try to get better. I could have said I'm trying to recover from depression or anxiety or from an injury or from, there was a whole list of things. But I just said generally I was trying to get super better. And so my first quest here was about the fact that our culture has become obsessed with happiness. And so you can see I'm supposed to focus on not a static state of happiness, but instead creating a well-lived life. And then there was an article for me to read that I read, and once I did, I clicked up in the top right-hand corner. I did this. And then from there, it took me back to my quest, and once I had done that one, it opened up a bunch more. And so you can see that my welcome to the first floor is completed, and now I have several other things, except one thing the way it is, scrap the elusive search for happiness. And then down at the bottom, I didn't click on this as a quest, but I think that was to just teach me about what quests are. And so I kind of have a number of choices of things I can do, and once I've done it, it says completed on there. To make it a little bit more like a video game, I also have things that she calls power-ups, and so they include chugging a glass of water, walk around the block, hug yourself, let your hunger be your guide, human tag, okay, so on and so forth, and they go down a ways, and you can actually even add your own power-ups as well, things that make you feel better or feel more positive. In addition to the power-ups, you also have bad guys, and so these are things in in real life that she tries to kind of fantasize, and the power-ups and the bad guys sort of go together. And when you go to these bad guys, the way you beat them is with a power-up, and so it becomes sort of like a game but using real life scenarios. um, and so the question is kind of why and how does the game help a player learn resilience? And sort of to back up a little bit, I didn't have any more screenshots, but you go on and on from there, and you can, and it's not exactly like a video game as you might imagine one, where you're beating levels and you've got a little guy that's moving around, but you can create your own identity. You don't have to be just Caroline Antonio, whoever you are. You can create an identity, and then you can, and then, like I said, the fantasizing part about creating bad guys and the power ups are kind of like the tools or the extra lives that you get, if you can imagine a more standard video game. And so I think you just continue on until you are at a place where you feel better about yourself, or you've reached your goal. And obviously, it's going to be more effective if there's something specific you're trying to recover from, or some specific goal you're trying to create. And so throughout the game, it'll ask periodically, is what is it that you're reaching for? And she calls it your epic win, but kind of what's your ultimate goal? And you can add that in. So for my research, I kind of took a look at why does this game help a player learn resilience? And so a couple things. There were actually a lot of things good about this game, but one is that learning is taking place in a meaningful context. Because like I said, you're choosing something you're really trying to get better from. And so in a game, any sort of game, the learning is always taking place in somewhat of a meaningful context, at least in the context of the game. But in this kind of game, in this SuperBetter, it's real life, and so it truly is meaningful because it's something that the player is struggling with, or having trouble with. Secondly, there is immediate feedback. And that is just proven, all the research that I've done on gaming, and really on a lot of types of learning. Feedback is so important, and immediate feedback is so important because it provides external motivation to continue on and to keep working. Thirdly, there's an element of fantasy, which is also really helpful for motivation based on what I read, because you can create an identity, you can fight bad guys, so on and so forth. And then lastly, the game gives information on demand or just in time, which is, I think, one of the most interesting things I read about in my research. This idea that in school we often give students information out of context, or so this goes a little bit with the first one about learning in a meaningful context, but we sometimes give them information and they don't have a chance to apply it right then, or they don't really understand we don't give them a good idea of how it relates to everything else that we're learning, and it makes it really hard for students to retain that information if it's not immediately related to other things they're learning, or not immediately applicable. And so in good games, they give information either on demand, which means when I ask for it. And so this game is like that. There were different buttons I could click that I could learn about the science behind why what it was asking me to do was helpful, different things like that if someone just randomly gave me that information, I might not remember it. But as I'm going through this game, as I'm trying to get better from whatever it is I'm trying to get better from, I can learn this information and I'll retain it because it applies directly to what I'm going through. And so that's the on-demand information, or just in time. It gives me information right when I'm getting ready to use it, and that's so important to helping learning. And so that was probably the most interesting thing I learned in my research, and it really applied to this game as well. So in terms of the 4 C's, I've already sort of mentioned the creativity part in terms of creating an identity and kind of getting into the game and thinking about the bad guys, these real life situations as bad guys, and things like that. Additionally, there's an opportunity for collaboration. So along with the quests and the bad guys and the power-ups and all those different categories I can go to, I can also find allies. And these aren't make-believe allies. These are real people. And so I can invite them. You can see here I can invite them through Facebook, or I can send them an email. And so these are people that I can really interact with and really give me support and encouragement. And I think that's and so Jane found that kind of collaboration helps people as they're trying to get better from some sort of illness or injury, or whatever else it might be. And so collaboration was really important here. thinking about the limitations of the game, just generally, and also from the 4C's perspective. One, I felt like as I went through this game, it seemed pretty easy to cheat because the coach is virtual, and in some ways, it just must take the player's word for the work that's done. And so I could have checked off, I've done this, even if I haven't. And obviously, I'm cheating myself, and I'll realize that pretty quickly, especially if this is something that's really important to me and I'm really trying to get better from. But I did notice that it does seem pretty easy to cheat or not really do the things to the full extent that the game is asking you to. And then secondly, I noticed that there's a lot of reading required. Which isn't necessarily bad, but I think it could be seen as not fun enough to be considered a game, and might not keep people as interested as Jane might want. And so some of the research I did talked about how games really need to be. I mean, there are lots of things that make good games, but one of them is you don't want there to be so much reading or so much kind of understanding of the game that it can't just be played. And so I did feel like there was a little bit too much reading, that I couldn't just get into it and start playing the game as quickly as I might have liked. So I would encourage anybody who is interested to check out Jane's website. She's got a blog, and she's got a list of a lot of games she's created and that are very interesting, and I think are very informative in how we view games and how games can increase learning in a lot of different contexts.